The Bengals go to Baltimore for road trip game number 2. Let's see what they can learn from Detroit.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're joined today, as we are on most Tuesdays as we record this episode for Wednesday, Bengals Sans, Mike Santagata. He's at Bengals_Sans on Twitter, currently traveling, as you can tell from his unfamiliar background. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube,
is that a king-size bed?
Reminder.
Ooh.
If you are watching on YouTube, just a reminder, do click that subscribe button. We really appreciate that, and you'll get notified every time we post a video. While James tends to Finn, who's having a little adventure over there, we will dive into the offense to start today's All-22 Lessons Learned episode with Mike. We'll also eventually get into some blocking issues potentially and where the offensive line is playing well, and the defense, of course. Those will be the three parts of the show. And we start with Joe Burrow's performance. I thought generally Mikey had a pretty good game, did a good job of taking what the defense was giving him for the most part. The Lions really stayed very true to too high pre-snap looks, mostly dropping out of too high pre-snap looks into quarter half, really trying to keep the ball in front of them. And Joe Burrow, as a result, in the first half, checks it down a lot. And I thought maybe he wasn't seeing the field necessarily as well as you would hope, but on further review, I thought it was just the Lions were taking away everything fun and made Joe Burrow play a boring, patient brand of football.
Yep, and that's kind of the point of playing that defense, is to keep everything in front of you. You split it up so that you can match the strength of the offense. And, I mean, Bengals love going 3-by-2, 3-by-1, so helps you out, makes sense. He did a good job taking what was given, scrambling when needed. It was nice to see that, and some attempts at slides, some of them better than others. So overall, I thought he was pretty good. I wouldn't say spectacular or even what I would expect against a team like this going forward, but pretty good. Got the job done, especially in the second half. The whole offense in the second half. But, yeah, that quarters, different types of quarters out there. I mean, there's flat foot, what the Packers try to do a little bit quarters too, and that's a little bit more susceptible that maybe Burrow could take a shot. But the way they're playing all that stuff, it's keep everything in front of you. And, I mean, it worked in the first half for the most part. Let the offense shoot themselves in the foot and see if they can get out of 3rd and 15 plus.
Mike, you've watched every snap of Joe Burrow this year. How has his pocket presence changed? Because it was very clear early that he had to pull it down and run. There was one time where he had a perfect dodge, essentially, and ducked at the perfect time and was able to scramble. That stood out, especially early in the game to me on Sunday. Is that different from what you've seen this year? Was it more obvious on Sunday against the Lions when you watch the film?
I think it's been getting better week by week, and probably as he gets more comfortable with his knee and the injury and all that. Not to say it was bad, but I can think a couple times early in the year he was more susceptible to maybe getting his eyes down and thinking, how do I get out of this? The spin left that everybody, I mean, it's becoming like a meme where he likes to do that. And he did it once this week when there was a free rusher. So, but other than that, I mean, he did a good job. He had that one play I think you just mentioned where he kind of like ducks and moves forward. That was nice. He stepped up generally well, and that's really what you want to see. If anything, he's progressed further than I thought he would, because my real fear was that, I wonder if he's going to feel okay by week 8, 9, stepping up into, because, I mean, in your brain, you think there's people coming at me. Let me run to the free space behind me and try to get away. Whereas when you play quarterback, it's step into the fire so that it goes around the backside, which just in your brain isn't like something you think like that's a good idea. But that's what you should do. And he does a great job already of stepping into that and letting off throws.
And you saw that, for example, on the post to Jamar Chase. They get a great blitz pickup from Chris Evans that we've talked about a few times. We'll come back to that play, I'm sure, a little bit later. I thought that there were some times against the Lions where when they just played this soft coverage and he had to check it down, he started to break down in the pocket, but he did a really good job of composing himself, recovering, and either throwing the ball away if he had to, if there's nothing open, or getting the ball to one of his check down options. I would say, though, that there are a couple things that are like a little bit worrisome heading into the Ravens game. So I want to get your take on these two plays, Mike, and how you think, or what you think maybe lessons learned from these plays could be for Burrow going into a game against Wink Martindale, who's going to try to disguise things and continue to throw these problems at the Bengals. The first of them is the Lions show 6 rushers. They have 2 linebackers in the A gaps, and they're wide with their defensive linemen. So there's 6 guys threatening to rush. There's 5 guys in protection for the Bengals. They're an empty. They don't have a tight end in line. They don't have a running back. So they slide protection left to the weak side to protect Joe Burrow's blind side. They go 3 for 3 on the left side of the line of scrimmage, and they give Riley Reef, and I think at this point it was Jackson Carman, a man opportunity on the right side, get the 2 guys that are on the inside. So protect the A gaps, protect the B gaps, and that leaves the outside guy on the right side, Joe Burrow's responsibility. He has to read that guy, and if he comes, he's got to be hot because nobody's blocking that guy, and that's the design of the play. And he needs to throw hot to either Chris Evans or one of the sits. There's 2 sit routes and a smoke route from Chris Evans, whatever you want to call that route, on the right side of the offense on that play. And instead, Joe Burrow kind of oblivious to that pressure and doesn't see it until it's too late, ends up taking a sack. The other one is the interception, or should have been interception, or could have been interception to T. Higgins. So in the context of Joe Burrow, generally, I thought pretty good in this game at taking what the defense gave him. The second play is the safety. Immediately, you see his first steps are forward. That tells you that at worst or at best, he's flat foot, but he's, despite being lined up as a 2 high, there's no vertical threat on that side of the field. His first steps are forward, and you have an in route coming in front of him, which Tracy Walker is able to undercut. T. Higgins has to break up the interception. When I think about how those plays translate to Baltimore, the Bengals would have to be a lot more precise on those plays, and specifically Joe Burrow will need to be more precise on those sorts of plays against the Ravens, right? Because of the challenges they pose.
Yeah. The first play specifically, that is, I mean, completely right. It's a full slide left, and Joe Burrow has to know that the end guy on the right is his hot key. If that guy comes, you're hot, because we don't have a guy that's going to block him, provided that Riley Reef is occupied with the guy inside of him. And really, this, I think, is a little bit in response to all the free runners they keep giving up like that, where now they're thinking, let's wad up all these dudes. We know who's coming, who's going to be free, and whatever they do, it doesn't matter. We have the hot read. If he comes, we're good. If not, it's protected. And he comes, but whenever you have that hot read, your quarterback has to be looking that direction to start his read as well. But he's looking to his left, to the slide side or the wall side, whatever you want to call it. So he looks over to where he's protected, and really the blind side versus not having the blind side. Bengals fans probably know with Willie Anderson, it gets a little bit overrated, especially when you're in shotgun all the time. So he's in shotgun. He looks left. He doesn't see anything to his right. By the time he gets off his read to the left, I mean, the guy's right there, and he tries to escape, but it's useless to try to get out of that. And then, I mean, that's the pressure situation. And then, well, one more thing with that is I'm wondering if if Hopkins made the call and Burrow miscommunicate, like he just didn't hear him or whatever, they were away. So that's a possibility. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know.
Burrow slid them left and then just didn't see the guy come on the right, I think.
I was trying to give it a little bit of an excuse maybe, but the offensive line all slid left. So I was like, well, the offensive line, they were right. On the other play, yeah, it's looked like 2 high pre-snap, and that means less guys underneath. You can hit T. Higgins on the dig route, but then you have Tracy Walker, right? I believe you just said his name. Coming down, he's a good player. So he recognized what's happening. He comes down and he's able to make a break on the ball. Good job by T to break it up. And that's kind of the two areas. It's two separate areas where one, Burrow is a little bit confused by the pressure or whatever happens there with him. And the other side is he gets a little bit confuddled by the coverage. So not something you want to see. And I'm more worried this week about him being a little bit messed up by the pressure situation because Wink Martindale, for my money, probably the best defensive coordinator at generating pressure.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out next week. Something to keep an eye on for sure. There's still a bunch of other offensive players to talk about, though, besides just Burrow in this game, and we'll get into how the rest of the offense played against Detroit and what we can expect against Baltimore coming up next.
You like saving money. I like saving money. Jake Liscow and Mike Santagata like saving money. And we can all save money with the Get Upside app. You can make up to 25 cents per gallon of gas you put in your vehicle with Get Upside. And it's simple. You just go in the App Store if you have an iPhone or Google Play if you have an Android, and you download Get Upside, GETUPSIDE. It's spelled just like it sounds, and use promo code touchdown. You're going to get a bonus 25 cents off each gallon. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your first fill up with Get Upside. It's free money. So take advantage of it now. It's the app that's going to get you paid. Download Get Upside. Use promo code touchdown for 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank in your first fill up.
James, I'm going to let you take us through the rest of the offense. I just talked a lot about a couple specific Joe Burrow plays that I'm going to be interested to see him clean up against Baltimore. But Joe Mixon had a good game. The left side of the offensive line had a good game. Where do you want to go with Mike next?
Well, we could talk about Joe Mixon a lot, but I think that fans specifically are focused on not RB1, but RB2. So let's talk about 25 and Chris Evans. When you went back, Mike, and you watched him, and it doesn't necessarily just need to be on offense. We could talk about the special teams too, the pass blocking, all of it, a full package. Compare that to what you've seen from Samaje Perine, and what elements does Chris Evans add that Samaje Perine might not have on this team? And look, we get it. Perine's a pretty good special teamer. You know, he's a veteran. We've seen him run and put up yards and numbers. But what does Chris Evans add to this team and bring to this team when he's out there that Perine doesn't have?
I mentioned this a long time ago, just with Perine in general, about, I think it was the argument between, do you want Perine or Mixon as your third down back? And this is even more so true with Chris Evans. If Perine lines up out wide, he's running a hitch or nothing. He doesn't do anything downfield. So maybe a quick screen. I don't know. He ran that was a hitch. Yeah, he caught the hitch and he was making those juke moves against Jacksonville. So that's really what he's doing out wide. It's all he really is a man zone indicator out there and a check down. When it comes to Chris Evans, as we all saw, there's a linebacker lined up on him and it's single high. Burrow says, okay, and lets Chris Evans cook. Gives a really nice release on that play, by the way. He starts outside, and then to really just mess with the linebacker, he jabs hard inside, which you see often to release outside to win inside. So he does that, fakes inside, and gone. And the linebacker is, I think, instantly 3 yards away. And that's just wide open in the NFL. So Burrow put it right on him, a little bit too far ahead maybe for a running back because they don't always make those plays. But Chris Evans is a really, really good receiving running back. And then when you even look in the backfield, he does a pretty good job pass protecting. We saw that. And that's Perine's specialty really is he's an okay runner and supposedly good pass protector. He's had a few lapses this year, but I mean, that happens to running backs. But if Chris Evans is giving you 90% of that pass protection, I mean, if it was me, I'd be going with him as the second running back, third down running back, or second, third down, whoever, just over Perine, just taking a lot of his snaps because of the versatility he adds to the receiving game as well.
And then another question, we'll stick with the offense here. And this one is something Zach mentioned, but I want to ask you specifically. We have 6 games now where Jamar Chase has just been this dominant field stretcher. He's had a reception of 34 yards or more in all 6 games. He had a 34-yarder on Sunday against the Lions, then the 53-yarder. Our defense is playing him different. How is this still happening? Because to me, if I'm the Ravens right now and I'm John Harbaugh, I go into Don Wink Martindale's office. I'm like, look, number one is not catching a deep ball. So figure that out and make someone else beat you. How is Jamar Chase still getting open?
Really, it's because despite what I think fans think that coverage works is just you double the best player and maybe you send another double. This guy, he's still singled up. He's a rookie, and a lot of defensive coordinators, maybe they haven't seen how dynamic he is down the field, or maybe they still just think like, but that's not our guy. And I definitely think the Ravens might do that, single him up with Marlon Humphrey, because I mean, they have a case to say that's not our guy. Like he's beaten these guys, but he hasn't faced Marlon Humphrey. So you have that. I mean, both big plays to Jamar Chase this past week came against single high, which means singled up basically. I believe both of them might have been cover one. And the one, it's just the classic. The 34-yarder was Jamar Chase, go ball. Joe Burrow, on it, right when his back foot hits, he's turning his feet and he's firing that thing. It doesn't matter if Jamar Chase is behind the cornerback, in front of him, even with him. He's putting it up there because he knows his guy's going to get it. And that's exactly what happened there. Jamar was behind him. The throw, if you just pause when his hands separate, looks like a terrible decision, but he just knows Jamar Chase and knows he's going to make that separation to make the catch. And he's singled up against, I don't know, the Detroit cornerback's name. It might have been Jerry Jacobs. That's the only name I remember. Sure. And then the other one, the corner doesn't even play it bad. He's playing outside leverage, so he's forcing things to the inside. Jamar Chase runs a skinny post deep down the field, and the safety gets caught up in the jet motion and the post sit type route underneath. I mean, that's just the classic Sean McVay. Read the post safety. You have your number one is to take the deep shot, and if that's gone, it's because the safety went with it. So hit the dig. So hit the stop route that's sitting there. So that's what's happening is whenever they get single high. Sorry, whenever they get single high, they're just attacking it.
So our defense is adjusting at all to this yet, or have they just not adjusted to it from what you've seen?
I don't think they've adjusted too much. The Lions play a lot of too high in general, so there was that. But I think it's possible defenses more so respect him as the number one type wide receiver and want to put their best corner on him. But at the same time, we haven't seen a cornerback that's really a number one type cornerback to go against him. So I think this week is the big tell where do they shadow Jamar Chase with Marlon Humphrey and let, I don't know, Jimmy Smith or whatever other corner, because I know Marcus Peters is hurt, take on T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And that'll be interesting to me, at least, to see, do defensive coordinators really respect him after 6 games now that they're going to take, I don't care what's happening, I'm putting my best cornerback on him and he isn't going to beat us this game type of deal this week coming up. So I think that'll be the big test.
I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Marlon Humphrey shadow Jamar Chase this weekend. I kind of expect it. I would say this in the Lions' defense, they did a good job of keeping Jamar Chase out of the game from beating them. And the couple times they got out of there too high, the couple times they showed press man on the outside, they just don't have the guys for it. And the Bengals just punished it. So they did, for the most part, game plan to take away the deep ball, to take away Jamar Chase. And then there are a couple plays where they line up and they give the Bengals a shot, and they had a good play called into it. And that's how they got beat. So that's the other thing I think that you have to think about with how does it keep happening? Well, you can't do the whole same thing for the entire game. I mean, I guess if you're Brandon Staley, maybe you can play too high the entire game, right? And dare offenses to just beat you underneath for the entire game. But most teams, and the Ravens are included in this, are going to do different things to try to keep the quarterback off balance. And if the Bengals had the right play called into that press man with a single high safety or something like that, like, they're going to beat it. Last note before we go to the defense, I just want to shout out, generally the running backs and pass protection, we're both really good. We talked a lot about the Chris Evans play. Joe Mixon also had a really nice cut block. on another play, so he also had a solid game in pass protection. So nice to see from Joe Mixon bouncing back in that regard. Coming up next, though, let's talk about the defense a little bit. It's not all offense. The Bengals will have to slow down Lamar Jackson, this Ravens offense that's been really good this year. And the Bengals defense has been the strength of this team. So we'll talk about what they did against the Lions and we can look forward to against the Ravens coming up next.
Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by McDonald's, which has proudly served communities since 1965. And they've been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food, whether it's their awesome double cheeseburgers, my go-to, the double quarter pounder with cheese, maybe some French fries or some chicken McNuggets. It's a place where classmates meet up for a study group, knowing they're going to have dependable Wi-Fi and endless supplies of French fries and McFlurries. I could use a McFlurry right now, fellas. All this offensive talk, a little ice cream would be the perfect dessert to go with it. So whether you're stopping after a Little League game or stopping on your way home from a road trip like I did on Sunday night after the Bengals win over the Lions in Detroit, head to your local McDonald's, refuel and reconnect. And did someone say a Locked On Bengals watch party? McDonald's, get there. And as always, I'm loving it.
Maybe you've got your McDonald's burger and the McFlurry is a little bit too much. You want to cut down on your sugar a little bit. If that's you, Built Bar is the way to go. It's a dessert. Well, it's not a dessert. It tastes like a dessert, but it's a protein bar. It doesn't taste like one. And maybe you don't believe us. We've been talking about these things for years on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Now just go try one and let them prove us right. Most protein bars, they're chalky, they're waxy. They're not very fun to eat, but a Built Bar, by contrast, we've talked about, they're coated in 100% real chocolate. So you get that, and then you bite into it, and you'll know you're eating something entirely different. It's not like any protein bar you've had before. It'll taste like you're eating a candy bar, especially if you get one of those almond flavors. It'll taste like an Almond Joy. They're low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, high in protein, so all the healthy benefits on top of being delicious. They have 9+ flavors, depending on if they're running limited time specials right now. So go check them out at built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, guys. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. Everybody that follows me on Twitter knows that I put clips up of all the offensive stuff that stood out to me, including something we didn't talk about, which is Quentin Spain having another really fine game, really in all phases. Jackson Carman had a nice game as a run blocker, but we can't spend 30 minutes talking about the offense, unfortunately, for you offense aficionados out there. And we really do have to mention the defense because this is going to be very important against the Ravens. They played a generally stifling game against the Lions. There was an opportunity or two for TJ Hawkinson and Jared Goff, but again, without the dudes to threaten in the passing game, I think the Bengals did a good job of bottling up the run and making this Lions offense look more toothless than it probably has in any other game this season. And injuries have something to do with that, but so did how the Bengals played, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. There was basically a shutout. I mean, they scored 3 points on the starting defense, but I mean, that was garbage time. It was 27-0 at that point, and I don't think those guys really they care. They care about their craft. They care about everything, but at the same time, they're not playing. They're trying not to get injured at that point. 27-0. You know that because the next drive, most of them were out, and that's why you pull them, so that you keep them fresh and keep them free from injury. I mean, what they're doing is interesting to me in that my takes from last year about Lou Anarumo being a bad pressure designer just keep being more wrong every week. He comes up with another good one. The main one I can think of is that Jesse Bates free runner down the pipe. That was a really good design. What they did was they went 5-1. Sometimes you see 5-0. A lot of times you do this. You're dictating the offensive line. So you have a guy.
When you say 5-1, what guy are you referring to? Defensive line linebacker there?
Yeah, defensive linebackers. So you have your five guys on the front line, defensive line, if you want to call them. But I think one might have been a linebacker, but I'm calling it a 5. And then one guy behind it was Von Bell, and he's matched up right over the running back. So what the offensive line matches that with almost every single time you ever see them do this is man protection or big on big, whatever you want to call that. So that just means I have the guy in front of me for the most part. Right tackle has a guy over him. Center has a guy directly over him. He's got him. So they're matching all that up. And Jesse Bates is far enough away that they don't consider him really a threat. And then he just starts creeping down. And right on the snap, he's sprinting and right down the A gap because they have the defensive tackle over the offense's left guard. He's going out, pull him out. The center, the nose tackle is going the other way to open up a hole, and he goes right through it. It worked perfectly. Pressure within like 2 seconds. So, I mean, that's a really good design. I think of the guys that are just playing really well. This Lions run game was good. At least pretty good, average, somewhere around there. And they got shut down before that last drive. I mean, it really shut down. Like they weren't doing anything. And big credit to DJ Reader to keep the linebackers clean and to make stops. Credit to the linebackers for when they are clean to get in there and make a tackle. Credit BJ Hill cross-face made a tackle. Josh Tupou, your guy, was playing well against the run. So they had it's a team effort. And I mean, against the run, they do such a good job. And it was no different. The pass game was kind of what I expected when it got to 3rd and long, where it's Jared Goff and he might be getting pressure because of some offensive line injuries, and they don't really have wide receivers to bail him out. So it's like, I didn't think that was going to go well.
And Jared Goff, I think, played a bad game, drifting back in the pocket. Brandon Thorne pointed this out in his review of Penei Sewell's game. Penei Sewell had a pretty good game, and like you said earlier, you can't try to escape out of the back of the pocket, and that led to a few of the pressures that Penei Sewell gave up because Jared Goff is like 12 yards deep. How about Cheeto? I mean, this guy is on his game and has infinite drip right now in post game. He's been really good the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, no different this week. And specifically the one play I want to highlight with him, and I have this clipped. I think you can search Awuzie cover 2 maybe, but he's playing cover 2. And when you're playing cover 2 as a cornerback, you're facing butt to the sideline, facing in. And why you're doing that is because you're the guy if somebody goes flat. If a running back releases or number 2 goes out, that's your guy. But otherwise, you hit your wide receiver, you force him inside, and then you sink underneath. You just keep, the drip. I was going to ask what was better, his play or his fit. But you just keep sinking vertically to get underneath the route. And they ran a go ball to God knows who. And Goff throws it up, and it's a pretty good pass, but he had great ball skills to go with his good coverage, and he gets up there one hand. It was like a block in the NBA. I think that's coming out again today. So he gets up there with one hand and breaks it up, knocks it out of bounds. I mean, a lot of corners, that's just going over their head. That's the honey hole shot. That's what offensives want to hit against cover 2. But, well, 1, you didn't occupy him. But 2, he made an amazing play. So he's very impressive every week. He's having a career year. It just really shows that I think he always had this talent in Dallas, but he didn't always have the safety play behind it there. And now he gets the good safety play to go with it, and he really is thriving. I wish we got to see Trey Waynes do the same thing right now, but he just keeps getting injured because I think it could help him too, although I think he had better safety play in Minnesota. But even Eli Apple, I mean, not a tough opponent, but he looked fine. And all the corners, I think, are looking pretty good.
Yeah, Mike, when you look at this Ravens matchup coming up, I don't think anyone's worried about the secondary necessarily going up against the Ravens wide receivers. We could talk about Mark Andrews, and I'm sure we will at some point. Yeah, Eli Apple versus Hollywood Brown is scary, but not if it's, Chidobe Awuzie going against him. But you were talking about the run game. And the last Ravens-Bengals game I was at, the Ravens ran for about, I really think it was like 1,513 yards against the Bengals. And they just beat their ass on the ground. And so this team obviously looks much different. Knowing what you know about the Bengals and their run defense and what they've been able to do through 6 weeks, knowing what the Ravens do, and I know Lamar's a freak, are the Bengals built to slow down this rushing attack for Baltimore?
Oh, God. It's the toughest test, right? This is your cumulative final week 6, and they have to do it again later. But I mean, this one's in Baltimore. They have the talent, they have the ability, and the Ravens' offensive line really in run blocking hasn't been as good as it was in 2019. 2020 they did the big runs, so I think it's comparable or maybe even just as good, better, I don't know, to 2020. But they don't have Ronnie Stanley just like they did last year to help that out. And 2019 they had Marshall Yanda. But digressing to talk about old football players, they can. It's so tough. It's so tough because what the Ravens do, it messes with your keys as a linebacker. And the Bengals, this is the only team they get into a 4-3 base against. And they're probably going to do it again this week, where they're going to have 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers, which exciting for me because I think all 3 linebackers are having career years. So getting them all on the field is awesome instead of having to pull one off. And what they like to do is max fit quarters is what it's called. So they're not, on first look, they don't look like they're +1 in the box like you normally would against the run, like you want to be. They have both their safeties are part of the run fit. So not only are the 7 guys in the front, and if they have another guy, a tight end matches inside and whatever else, but they have both their safeties involved as well. But the thing that makes it so difficult is that when they don't run zone read, you wish they ran zone read, but they run as counter bash and counter read, and it's pulling guards and tackles away from the running back to go with Lamar for a counter bash. So as a linebacker, you're taught reading the guard to the running back, and the back's going one way, the guards are going the other way. So you really have to find the football and try to follow it there. But if you don't get over top of the guards in time, then you're getting sealed. So it's a really well done design. I mean, Greg Roman, I think everybody praises him for his run designs. And that's what's going to be so difficult is linebackers being able to read in time. I think the defensive line should do a good job. And Sam Hubbard, this is where he shines, in my opinion, is the squeeze and pop against these read options, the counter bash zone read, counter read, all that stuff. Where he shines is being able to squeeze down and pop out with the quarterback. And they need everybody to have the game of their life pretty much to really stop this run game. Slow it down is something I could expect. Stop it? Probably not. I don't think anybody does a great job at stopping them, but I could definitely see them being slowed down, especially DJ Reader keeping guys clean. Maybe he gums up, maybe knocks the center back into the guard when he's pulling, things like that.
Very banged up on the offensive line are the Baltimore Ravens, but it just hasn't seemed to matter. You mentioned Ronnie Stanley. Their rookie guard, Ben Powers, also, I believe, is injured, dealing with I think he's on IR actually, but I might be wrong about that. Kevin Zeitler, Bradley Bozeman, Patrick McCarry have all been blocking pretty well for the Ravens, though. And so is Alejandro Villanueva as a run blocker. And two fun facts here. One, the Ravens lead the NFL in gap versus zone attack by like a country mile. It's not even close. Like, I think everybody probably knows that, but I'm just taken aback a little bit at how much that percentage is when so much of the NFL is zone heavy right now. The other fun fact, the Bengals are actually running the ball slightly more frequently than the Ravens through 6 games this year. I don't know if anybody would have expected that, and I don't think that we should expect that to continue. Last little thing before we get out of here, not just the offensive line. The Ravens are going to use 2 tight ends a lot. They're going to use a fullback a lot. And Patrick Ricard, Eric Tomlinson, and Mark Andrews are all doing very well. According to PFF in run blocking, they are the highest rated run blockers on this Ravens team. And Patrick Ricard has been on the field for 240 snaps, 240 fullback snaps in this Baltimore offense. We talked about the fullback a little bit with the Vikings matchup in week 1 when their wide zone attack and CJ Ham. And this time in a gap scheme, we're going to see a whole lot of Patrick Ricard in that same role. Really excited to see how this matchup goes, as we're in another, as we discussed, James, another measuring stick for this Bengals team in a lot of ways. And we'll be back on Sunday. We'll be back tomorrow with the crossover, but back on Sunday to talk about what happens after the game. Until next time, Bengals fans, thanks to Mike Santagata for joining us with his takeaways from the All-22. For James Rapien, I'm Jake Liscow. Hoo day, and have a good one.